Hey, Cyberspace, Nathan Wallace here. Today is September 21st, 2018, and this is industry news. So we have general, power system, cybersecurity, and conferences. So as far as hurricane outlook, Hurricane Florence just kind of swept through the Carolinas, dropping a lot of rain. I think at one point it did get somewhere around 1 million people as far as total power outage. And now the latest numbers I saw were about 20,000, 25,000. So definitely, kudos, the linemen, the Duke emergency planners, even some of the federal, state officials, as far as emergency response, emergency planning. It was amazing as far as watching these responses and how fast they were really able to recover power in some of these areas. There are two active systems out there right in the Atlantic. I think Elvin and then Kirk. One's a tropical storm, one's a tropical depression. And I think, about mid next week, I think they're going to have a better idea as far as the exact path as far as the continental U.S. All right, so keep on trucking. This next article, let's see. So we have Duke, and this is a response from the hurricane, right? Duke has to shut down the gas plant after dam breach caused by flooding, potential leaks of coal ash. These power plants, they burn the coal, so you have the ash and you have to store it, stockpile it, where this dam breached, and now it all just kind of floods the area. And, there's some talks as far as, here we go. Storing coal ash near waterways poses liability risk for utilities and pollution risk for the surrounding communities. Toxic coal ash waste contains heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, and has been linked to cancer. So, I'm really curious as far as what's going to come out of this. Obviously, the big hit is, you had to take the power plant offline, right? Because even if the coal ash wasn't an issue, the plant flooded, so you can't generate power. So this brings up the issue, right? As far as how do we properly store, how do we properly dispose this stuff, and the environmental concerns around flooding. There is some big time environmental concerns. I actually saw some satellite imagery where the flooding, you could actually see, some of the oils and gases and stuff kind of flowing back into the ocean, after the flooding along the coast of the Carolinas. So let's see, keep on cruising. So this is something, that just happened this week, and this was published by NOLA.com. And, will the intense heat lead to power blackouts in Louisiana? And, it is somewhat close to home, and this goes back to what I covered as far as last week in the industry news on how MISO had a peak load event back in January that actually resulted in power outages here in Louisiana, and the same thing happened Monday as far as peak load event. Didn't have the generation capacity online to support the load, and MISO basically sends out these requests saying, hey, for all the utilities participating in the market, as far as consumption, tell your customers to limit power consumption. Well, same thing happened this past Monday. I don't think there was any power outages. I mean, it's something I want to look into more to see. But this is at least 2 or 3 events I've seen this year, that really kind of hit home. Including Clico and Entergy. And there's the tweet there from Entergy saying, hey, limit usage and until 11 p.m. But this brings up, just like I said last week, does it really kind of hits home as far as, can we create a more energy efficient, reliable, can we store this energy? That's been one of the challenges historically. Power from the moment you generate it, you have to pretty much consume it. This stuff's going really fast, right? 60 cycles a second. So, can we store it? And that goes back to some of the battery storage stuff, and evidence supports saying yes, we can. It just has to be integrated. It has to be engineered, and it needs to be cost effective. Let's see. So oldest nuclear plant in the U.S. closes. So this is the oldest plant actually in the U.S. Let's see. So Oyster Creek Nuclear Generation Station outside New Jersey came online in 1969 and was generating power. That's too cool. So just wanted to kind of mention that. AEP Ohio files to develop 900 megawatts of solar and wind. So let's bring that up real quick. Yeah, AP took the first step Wednesday toward developing 900 megawatts of renewable resources in Ohio, right? So Ohio has that whole plan as far as Power Forward initiative. Filing amendment long-term forecast with state regulators that funds 173 million in net benefits to Ohio customers through renewable energy purchase agreements relative to what is available in the market today. So definitely, check it out. Utility Dive, right? They always do a good job as far as these insights, kind of putting it into context. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that as well to see where that goes. So keep on cruising. USDA 400 million, and this brings up something I wasn't aware of as far as the utility cost, from rural to urban area. So invest right at 400 million. Different projects. Sadly, I didn't see Louisiana. So we have Arkansas, Colorado, Indiana, Ohio, Minnesota, Missouri, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, and Virginia. No Louisiana. Sad. So the largest, 68.5 million to back a solar farm run by Nextera Energy Resource in Arkansas, which could meet the needs for 21,000 homes. So that's some solar stuff. Let's see, keep on cruising. Yeah, I think this was the statistics. Found that the rural households are paying as much as 40% more of their paycheck in electricity bill than urban homes. That's something I didn't know about. All right, so moving on, we have power system cybersecurity news. So California has this IoT bill, Internet of Things, and I think it's mainly with regards to privacy, kind of protecting privacy. But I think this goes back into the definition as far as what is IoT, and specifically they call this bill, CB 327, Information Privacy Connected Devices. So when you talk about Internet of Things, connected devices, putting it in context of a smart grid, does that include your smart meter, your AMI, your automated metering infrastructure? So let's see, it talks about some of the, compare versions. Let's see if we can actually, may have to come in here and get a PDF of it. Unauthorized access, destruction, use, modification, or disclosure, means access. So this is cool, right? This is actually placing requirements on these devices. And this is like at the state level as far as a law saying, hey, if this device is going to be used by a consumer in this state, if you're going to sell it to a consumer, if you're going to sell it in this state, then it has to be, it has to have this function, it has to have these features. And this is good. This is really good for the industry. And, maybe the vendors will start taking a closer look, start trying to implement this stuff. So this is when it was introduced. I think it was amended. And as far as some recent approval, I think the last thing that's documented here is September 4th. But I actually just found out about this week. So this is going to be linked below. So definitely, welcome any thoughts on this. And I think it really does have implications, just not for home Internet of Things, but just general, connected devices. But of course, as far as the real implications, it depends on how the lawyers read it, right? So we'll see. Let's see. Keep on cruising. Connecticut Critical Infrastructure 2018 report. So this is a really good report coming out of Connecticut. Let's see. I did kind of skim it a little while ago, highlight a few things. So this is, let's see, total pages. This is 15 pages. So the, kind of executive summary talks about the DHS briefings with regards to foreign activity in the grid. And, of course, there's a lot of back and forth on saying, what's really, as far as what's the extent, did it really happen or not necessarily did it really happen, but were there hundreds of utilities really impacted by this event? So let's see, keep on cruising. This is something, so the chairman of the FERC urged U.S. utilities to divulge more information regarding cybersecurity incidents. So this is back in July 2018 at a hearing, noting the present reporting requirements do not portray the risk presented by hackers. So I think, there was some report that basically showed that utilities hadn't reported anything as far as events. And, NERC actually is coming online saying you have to report everything, so not just failed logins, not just successful logins, but also failed logins or failed attempts to infiltrate the system. Not just the successful ones. So he stated that cyber threats to the bulk power system and consequently, to the delivery of electricity are ever changing and demand constant vigilance. And, you say stuff like that, like the threat is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, but the grid isn't, right? The technologies to protect the grid aren't changing. We kind of know, and I talked about this at another at a conference a couple months ago, and I've written a couple articles on this. If you look at what can happen to the grid as far as the cyber, we know what can happen, and do we chase the threat, or do we actually try to build this security into the grid by design? Yep, sorry about that. You may have noticed another break in the video. But this, it is interesting as far as, are we playing this threat whack-a-mole, where we're trying to take every little threat and go and protect against each individual little threat, or are we truly making these systems more resilient, more robust, more redundant, more secure? So maybe I can talk more on that in a later video. Just keep on cruising. What else stood out? While the world of cybersecurity consultants, the market of cybersecurity professionals or cyber warriors is constrained, human resources departments face challenges in recruiting, evaluating, and retaining cybersecurity subject matter experts. So it is true, right? We have cybersecurity as far as in traditional IT back office, IT, right? Information technology, who may be familiar with, web servers, file servers, database, sysadmins. But when you talk about securing the grid, it's a different thing. You have relays, you have communication equipment, you have remote terminal units, you have SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. These are essentially specifically tailored control systems. These aren't even general control systems that you would find, let's say, in oil and gas. These are specifically tailored for power systems, for the power grid. And, you can't just take someone from the back office IT and put them in these environments and expect for them to be able just to secure them, just like that. So it is, right? There's already a talent shortage with regards to back office information technology cybersecurity, let alone power system or power grid control system cybersecurity. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge across the board. I did want to mention, kind of add to that, there are some universities, they're actually coming online with specific degrees around this type of stuff. So, we have basically a science of, computer science. We also have a degree, let's say electrical engineering, right? Where electrical engineering, you can focus on communications, power, microelectronics, and then Louisiana Tech actually came online with a whole degree program, a bachelor's of science in cyber engineering. So this is an engineering. It's not something, let's say, computer information systems or IT. This is a form of engineering focused on cybersecurity, cyber engineering. So it's a really interesting degree program. So hopefully things like that, and we're seeing other universities as well kind of take on that model to help really, create these future cyber warriors, because we need them in the industry. Let's see, all four utilities noted their dependence on cable and broadband companies and that they need to work cooperatively with them, right? So nothing exists in a vacuum. A lot of these utilities do use the internet. They do use the internet service providers, not only for their business activities, but also their operations. So that was kind of interesting as far as them specifically calling that out. And then, I highlighted this in a different color. Despite millions of probe attempts, there were no known cyber breaches during the past year. Great news, right? Great news. But, this goes back to, okay, we say this, there were no breaches, but of course you have to be looking. The analogy I use a lot is the cop. If we build the roads, we build red lights, we have stop signs, but how do you know no one's really running that red light unless you have a street cam? How do you know no one's running that stop sign? How do you know no one's really speeding unless you have someone with that radar gun, unless you have a street cam? We have to be looking, in this industry as far as cybersecurity, monitoring, intrusion detection. They have basically a thing called a PCAP, where you take a packet capture, and one of the slogans is PCAP it or it didn't happen, right? You have to record it or it didn't happen. It's good news, but of course we need to make sure we're actually looking, we're actually monitoring everything, not just the back office IT stuff, but not just the web server. A attack on a utilities website isn't the same as an attack on their substation, right? Or their AMI or their relays, their SCADA system. That's two separate things, and we can't equate them as the same. Let's see. So let's see. Keep on cruising. U.S. administration's national cyber strategy. So I think this came out this week. And I'm still trying to digest everything, but President Donald J. Trump strengthening America's cybersecurity. We must protect the American people, the homeland, and our great American way of life. Definitely agree with that, as I'm sure every citizen will. Let's see. So these are just some of the highlights, but if you actually scroll down and click this guy, you'll see the full report, and it's a 40-page document here. Let's see if and it just talks about general, kind of high level as far as infrastructure, the critical infrastructure sectors. Doesn't specifically call out anything, as far as the power systems, power grid. But it mentions as far as, we're going to be changing our stance, or the U.S. will be changing its stance. That's an interesting little graphic, integrated circuit with an American flag on it. Let's see, priority actions, securing critical infrastructure, and of course they're just talking about the general critical infrastructure sectors. Mentioned some stuff as far as space, some stuff as far as telecommunications, priority actions. But I think, reading some of the analysis of this report, it basically mentions offensive, doing more offensive activities, which means the U.S. is, once again, our civilian infrastructure is just going to be in the crosshairs for this geopolitical stuff, this back and forth that's going to take place in cyberspace now. I mean, it's already taking place, but is there going to be an escalation where we're going to have more people, more nation states, more people, more resources, really going after these assets in cyberspace? So something, it is something to be aware of, I guess, that as we have this type of escalation, our civilian infrastructure that, once again, isn't owned, isn't managed, it's not maintained, it isn't engineered by the federal government. They don't have the, I think I heard one representative a couple years ago say, and this is actually someone from the intelligence community, say, the U.S. government, federal employees, they don't have the expertise, the resources, the ability to protect critical infrastructure or civilian critical infrastructure. So that's left up to the private sector. Really, when you get into it in practice, that's left up to the businesses, the private companies, the municipalities, the co-ops, the engineers, to protect these systems. So keep on cruising as far as conferences, right? I'm waiting for them to post some of the minutes as far as the power and energy, power system communications and cybersecurity committee. So those meeting minutes should be posted. And once again, right, those are industry technical standards, best practices and guides that they're developing there. Let's see, Future Texas Cyber Summit, ICS Village, Hack the Capitol, GridSecCon, which that's actually sponsored by NERC. We have S4, which is General Industrial Control Systems, and then Distributech, which is focused on, right, the power systems, power grid, traditionally distribution, but over the past few years they've actually been reaching out as far as the entire grid. So that's it as far as industry news. Right, today was September 21st, 2018. As always, questions, comments, feel free to reach out. You can comment below or shoot me an email. So thanks as always. Hope you enjoy.